Well, it was a great opportunity, but she told me to dolphinitely scale back on the fish puns.
What? I heard Dolph as in Lundgren?
Dolph as in Lundgren, yes. Hi, welcome to the Suplex
Okay.
Siblings web series, where we talk about all things entertainment, mostly in the sports entertainment realm, but entertainment in general. I'm Chris.
I'm Crystalline. And we saw a movie
Yeah.
this past weekend. You may have heard of it. I don't know. It's not like it's popular or anything.
Yeah.
It's not like it's made, $500 million.
It's not too
It's
popular
not like
now,
it's
yeah.
Jason Momoa. It's it's not like it's DC. We saw AQUAMAN, and we have opinions about it. And so, but it's also last week of December. That's kind of weird to say. So the year's coming to an end. There are a lot of films that we saw this year, many of which we saw before we ever started our channel. So we wanted to talk about, obviously, our thoughts about AQUAMAN, but also kind of just ranking where every film of this year
Kind of falls into place
because
in our
it was
opinion,
it was a really good year.
It
for
was a good
films.
year. Films, video games, just entertainment in general. I would say it was actually a pretty decent year. We're mostly a WWE channel or wrestling channel in general, not just WWE. It's been
But
a
we
weird
like
year.
all of the
Yeah.
things.
It's been a weird year for wrestling, but it's still been a decent year.
I think for our favorite human in the
Yeah,
wrestling
yeah,
realm, it's been a really
been
good year for her.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've got quite a few things to talk about today. Obviously, the big elephant in the room. There's some new things going on here. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video.
Mm-hmm.
But without further ado, let's get into it. AQUAMAN.
Okay,
AQUAMAN.
so the title of this video probably is a lot for people to handle and to take in. I don't for many. I would answer that question with yes. The short
Question
answer,
mark?
the short answer would
Yes,
be
question
yes.
mark.
In my opinion, you can disagree. I don't care. For several reasons. So I have a lot to say about it. I obviously, I haven't been able to stop talking about it, so I'm going to continue to, bother you with my opinion. But now, all
It's
of our
bothering everyone
internet
else,
friends
yeah.
get to hear it.
Now
So
you
why
all
don't-
get to be bothered by it, not just me.
Yeah, so why don't you start it off so that, I can
Well,
calm
okay.
down over here.
First off, I think AQUAMAN was a great movie. It's gotten some weird reviews, even though I personally think it's one of the best superhero movies, if not the best. Obviously, it's probably the best DC movie. It's one of the best superhero movies that I've seen. And I think that's really the key word for it, is that it's a superhero movie. It's an superhero origin story. It's not, drama and just action and drama. That's it.
And yeah,
it's
it
a
was
comic
like a healthy
book
balance
superhero
too.
movie.
And I think what's interesting about that is because it really did have that comic book origin story feeling, but the way the story unfolds, it's almost more of a fantasy than a traditional comic book superhero origin story. I would think, in the way that this film is shot and the story unfolds. And you mentioned it wasn't strictly drama action. There were a lot of elements to it that were very different, things we've never seen before in this genre of film. I've never, I'm about to get into it. Y'all be prepared. I can't, James Wan, who directed the film, he is a master of character-driven conflict. He has dominated the horror genre for forever. I mean, The Conjuring is still one of my favorites horror films in recent years, second only to Get Out, but that's a different story. We don't need to talk about that. Invisible foreshadowing, that was amazing. But anyway, back to James Wan. So he's just a master of character-driven conflict, and I think that what was so different about the drama in AQUAMAN was that it felt very relatable because it was very relative to family.
It was family. It was relevant to the character. It wasn't just thrown in,
Yeah, it was all about the hero's journey, and so it all felt very necessary. The drama that the character endured during his, journey
trials
to
and-
and the action sequences themselves
Amazing.
were killer.
And,
No pun intended.
You know, I think one thing that you really have to point out is the fact that, I mean, we talked about it as soon as the movie was done. They portrayed so well the fact that they were underwater. That is extremely difficult to do.
And that's the thing, like if you take nothing else from this movie, it is visually stunning and it's so fun to watch.
And I think that's really what kind of makes this a new era or a new age for DC movies, because you know you're used to it just being a dark, brooding movie, or you have Wonder Woman where you know it's kind of like they're trying to mix the dark aspects with the bright colors. They were blurring the lines.
Yeah.
This movie perfectly captivates that, you know, this is Atlantis. This is supposed to be like a beautiful world. There's obviously dark elements because it's supposed to be, you know, he has his trials. He has to face challenges. It's not just, you know, rainbows and puppies all the time.
And that world building it's so key to a movie like this. And I like the way that, you know, James Wan himself, he had described, you know, his inspiration behind Atlantis. He really wanted to go into it with this idea that we all have about the ocean. Like, it's so wonderful and beautiful and unlike anything we've ever seen, but it's also terrifying because there's so many depths that we have yet to uncover, and there are terrifying creatures. And this movie embodies that feeling. Like, you get that sense of wonder with the sense of fear of the unknown.
Right.
And yeah, with them, the visual effects of them being underwater, you never once stop in the middle of this movie and go,
that's not real.
That's CG.
Yes.
The only time I actually stopped and noticed the visual effects and the CGI was when I stopped and thought, how are they doing this? Because it was so convincing. It felt like they were underwater, and I mean,
everything from the visuals to the sound. The sound alone, just that was the icing on the cake.
This is what's so fascinating, because I mean, we talked about this before after we saw it, and at first it was going to be a complaint for me because I was like, it's a little bit all over the place, and you know, it's very untamed, and you know, but when I thought about it after the film, I just was kind of blown away. My mind was blown when I put the pieces together. So we have Arthur, Aquaman, this character who is unlike any character we've ever followed, you know. I think similar to Venom, you know, in that way, like the way that
they're portrayed.
They're very different. So Arthur is a very wild, untamed, almost youthful character in his personality and in his approach to life. And the soundtrack, the way that it kind of, there's no particular theme to this soundtrack. There's no, you know, apart from a few scenes where they did have some really cool aquatic sounds that, you know, where particularly the scene in Italy when Mira is on the rooftops, and there's some pretty cool sounds there. But for the most part, the soundtrack is like up and down, but it acted as an accessory to his journey because
it wasn't just added on just because.
It felt very intentional after I thought about it, because I was like, oh wow, like it almost allowed us to experience his story more, because it, you know, where all of our senses are being activated in the way that his would be, you know, which was really interesting.
I think that's really what sets this apart, is that you're able to put yourself in his shoes. You're able to see it through his eyes and experience it as if you were the viewer are there with them. And I think that's
rare in comic book
it's
films.
Rare in comic book films. It's rare in films in general, I would say. You know,
it's a hard thing
other than
to do.
like,
I think that's always the goal,
and I think it really kind of helps that, you know, you said the director James Wan has, you know, the horror background, because, you know, horror movies, they want to captivate you and put you in,
right, and it's all about tapping into your senses, and I think that's why this movie is above all else, because he understands that attention to detail and how do I, you know, attack the audience's senses, physical or otherwise, you know, because that's what this film does, and I think that's why I left like just so excited by it, because it really taps into all of your senses visually, like, you know, the auditory experience, all of it. And then there's some really feel good moments, you know. We had talked about how it had a happy ending. You know what I mean?
And that is rare.
Yeah.
And you know, we mentioned it before. The fact alone that they didn't go with the cheap drama.
Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah. Spoiler warning. They didn't go with the cheap drama of you know, both of his parents are dead.
Right.
You know,
And
because most superhero movies, most
100%.
comic book movies, most anything with some sort of origin story in it usually goes that route.
Exactly, because like you said, it is a cheap route
Right.
to create conflict in the character's life and thus evoke an emotion in the audience. Because then you're like, oh, I empathize with you. That's so awful. And so they took it a step further, and they were just like, you know what? We're gonna give this guy some real challenges. And while some people complain about the storyline of this movie, I have to disagree, because while it's very simplistic, you know, he's gonna go find the trident and become the Ocean Master
And, you know,
in the King of Atlantis.
That's really something that it kind of bothers me when others get mad about that sort of storyline, because that's something that, you know, I want to see in a fantasy world.
It's a classic trope that everybody looks for, because it makes you feel
that's
like
really
you're a part of it.
Something that sets apart, you know, because it's not realistic, or, you know, that's been overused. It's not supposed to be something that's hyper realistic.
Right.
Obviously, it has realism to it, but at the same time, it's a comic book movie.
Right.
It's not supposed to be something where you go into it and you're like, that wouldn't happen. You know?
And I think everybody has something to say about a heavily produced film like this genre of movie. They're always very produced. They're very theatrical in that way, and so people will find that, you know, oh, the simplicity of it is too simple. It's too easy, and I completely disagree with that. You know, because like, yeah, it has, like we'd said before, it has a fantasy feel to this movie, and even the way that they, like, the mystique behind the trident, it has an Excalibur kind of, you know, and he has to be worthy enough to wield this trident. That to me it's classic. It's something that we look for in a fantasy.
And that's where you see his hero's journey.
Yeah.
And that's this movie, they really set in the beginning, they set the tone of, you know, this movie is after Justice League. It's not before, it's not during.
It's like a direct continuation, which was interesting, because how often do we get an origin story after we've already met this character? He's had his abilities his entire life, and that's so unique and interesting. You know, he wasn't.
That's really something too. He's had the abilities his whole life, but he didn't suddenly, oh, I know what I'm doing.
He's very just average guy. He just, you know, blue collar worker, just enjoys, you know, drinking with his dad. His dad's amazing, and like you said about them not, I sincerely thought they're gonna kill his dad. You know, there's certain scenes, and again, spoiler alert, and there are scenes where that would have really tarnished the film for me, and I felt like it was great storytelling, you know, in that they didn't have to do that to tell a compelling story, to give him some real conflict, and you know, with the conflict with his brother, it was just beautiful.
With you know, the parents thing, I had said it before that we have a lot of conversations outside of, whenever we see a movie,
we're like, this has to be on the channel.
So, you know, if his parents, you know, if they were both gone, you know, if they went that route, I think that really would have changed him as a character. He wouldn't have been the hero that he was. He wouldn't have had the development that he had. The movie wouldn't have ended the way it did.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, he is really driven by his love for his father.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of where his heart comes from, and the characteristics that we love in him. And you know, it's because he loves his father so much.
His father, he's such a great character, because usually, you know, a movie like this, if the things that happened to someone, you know, then usually the father ends up, you know, psycho or the abusive father, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, they go that route. Even if they start out, oh, they're the good guy, but then, you know, this happened and now they're this. They didn't go that route.
And
they
even
made,
with
they made
his
it a
mother
good
as
story.
well,
Even
you
his
know,
mother,
it turned out to be a very
the father
heartfelt
still very much,
situation.
he cared about the mother,
yes,
you know.
that was amazing. Yes.
Because there's always, you know, people don't seem to complain about that trope, that kind of trope, as
when
much
it's
as they do.
overused.
Yeah,
It's very overused.
that trope is way overused.
How easy would it have been for his father to resent his mother and
Or him.
or him, yeah, for that happening,
Yeah.
and for him to kind of grow up hating his mother. The fact that he grew up loving his mother, who wasn't there, who left when he was about like 3 years old, and his father still loves her and they celebrate her, that was beautiful. And I think that speaks a lot to his character development throughout the story, because I think a part of him, obviously he does have an abandonment issue because you know a parent left, but and that reveals itself in different ways than the typical stereotype that we see with a single parent raising the child in these kinds of origin stories. And his character development is so interesting because in the very beginning of this film, he is introduced to Black Manta, which is exciting, and he leaves his father to die.
And one thing we mentioned was that this isn't just an Aquaman origin story. This is Black Manta's origin story.
Right.
This is you know, kind of Mara's origin story.
It's Mara's origin story too.
I wouldn't say as much, but
I think it is because we do get a really good sense of who she is
we do.
in this story. And we learn
the only
get to know her.
the only reason I say it's not as much of an origin story for her is that she was already kind of a developed character in the film.
Very much
She
so.
was developed to the point where she was the voice of reason, able to help him. She was already on her own track.
It's more of like our introduction to why she's like this, like
correct.
who she is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in the beginning when he does leave Black Manta's father to die, there's that sense of wondering, oh, so he's an anti-hero. That's the initial thought.
And just remember that if you see this film, you know, that is a very important aspect because that kind of sets the tone for his entire journey.
Right, because then you see later on throughout the film, he experiences remorse for that.
Yeah.
And he evolves to a point where he no longer will stand for that. You know what I mean? And I think that is the true evolution of his heroic journey, because you really get to see his humanity. And I think that that's beautiful that they included that in the film, because a lot of the time with these superheroes, these larger-than-life personas, we don't see that. We see them as superheroes. You know, he's very, very human, and he really does have this development of, like, regret. And, you know, I shouldn't have done that, just because, you know, and his thought process in the beginning was they're doing bad things, they did this to themselves, which a lot of people have that mentality, you know? And I think he kind of grows to see that maybe it's not up to me to decide that. Which I think, because a lot of people, I think, in these stories, they take it upon themselves to kind of play God a little bit. And I get to decide that you're bad, you know? And I think he really took a step back and was like, who am I to decide that, you know? And the whole time he's professing, you know, he's not a king. And then it's Mara who helps him realize, like, no, you're better than that. You're a hero. We need a hero. We don't need a king.
We don't need a king. We need someone who's going to protect us, who's going to help us.
And a true hero is somebody who I believe, you know,
and
has flaws
that's
like
really,
that. And
that's really
them.
kind of what the movie capitalized on, is that his brother, he's a king. You know, he does what a king would do, but that's not what they need.
Yeah.
That's not what they need at that time.
And I think with the other characters, his relationship with his brother, very interesting. Very interesting, because
very intriguing.
I just love how it develops, you know, because he thinks about what it would have been like if he had known about him, and if they had met, and if they could have been brothers. And even at the end when he spares him,
and he even mentions that.
He mentions that and he says it, and that to me that's a hero. That's something that I think people need to see more of. And it really spoke to his character, and I think that's what I like the most about his character. He's very consistent. He's, you know, he grows and he evolves, but he doesn't change.
Right.
He stays untamed, wild, youthful throughout the whole film. Even when he becomes the mighty hero, he is the same person. It's amazing.
Yeah, he stays consistent, but he evolves.
Mhm.
Chris Jericho.
Okay. Wow.
Uh,
Wrestling
and
references. But I think that can also be accredited to Mira. And
Yeah.
because I think their
She-
relationship is perfect. Because
Yeah,
she doesn't try to change him.
no, and he
At
doesn't
all.
try to change
He
her.
doesn't
They don't try to
her.
change each other. And I think
Beautiful.
a really strong part of this movie is they very easily could have gone the route of, plot twist. Mara is actually the hero of everyone,
And in a way, she is a hero.
She
for sure.
She's the perfect supporting queen. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
and
the perfect
amazing,
supporting
because he
character.
would not have realized his own heroism
Right.
had it not been for her. And and she, I think what's really cool about her, she's so strong and so secure. She understands that. She doesn't need that.
No.
She's like, I don't need to be the one worthy enough to wield the trident. Go get it. You need to go get that because I already know it's you. And it's just, she's just so strong in that.
And a bit of a controversial quote unquote statement is the film doesn't try to push any sort of like political aspects. They don't try to force anything onto anyone.
Well,
And they take Mara, and they very easily could have made the character a stereotype. And they chose not to. They chose to keep her.
and that's very
she's
that
queen.
speaks to the original character too. Mira's she's just a strong-willed character, and
Right.
she embodies feminine strength, which I just love.
And they don't go overboard with it. They don't make it to where she's a damsel, but they also don't make it to where she's like, I don't need help from anyone.
And I think that was they had a very healthy balance. They helped each other.
Yeah.
And
She wasn't unstoppable. He wasn't unstoppable. They
They
needed
needed
each
each
other. They needed help
Right.
from each other.
And I just the fact that they're both on this journey together, and like you said, she's already an established character. He's having this origin, and there are moments where she's just like annoyed with
His
him.
antics. Yeah.
But like we said, they never try to change each other. They're always they just accept each other. They're just like, let's just do this. And it felt like what was just amazing about this, what I love about the relationship, it felt like a friendship. Like they built a friendship.
They
that
built a healthy relationship.
yeah.
It was a normal
They
human relationship.
actually
that was the problem.
like each
Or
other.
not the problem, but the good
Like
thing.
that's what they coincide. They help each other out. They understand each other, and they love each other for who they are.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful because you watch them become friends, and so when they do end up together, it's sweet. And I think one of my favorite parts actually in the movie is like the most simple little scene that I think encompasses everything we just talked about in regard to them and his character development. It's just when he's like, what do I do now? And she's like, you just be their king. And he just like kisses her forehead and was like, this is gonna be fun, basically. And that was just perfect.
There's a lot of little things in the movie. I think we could talk about that all day, but we do have other stuff. So I mean, like, Go See Aquaman is
see
great.
it. So that's why we liked it. Now
Let's talk about our
but
favorite
like in
movie.
comparison, like why would
Before we do that,
I just need to know.
let's talk about what are our 5 favorite movies
Of the year?
in order.
In order of best to worst.
Best to worst.
Okay,
Or,
best.
well, not best to worst, but your absolute favorite to still your favorite, but not as good as number 1 sort of
Okay.
thing.
Oh, so this is actually really hard because this was a really good year for movies. Aquaman is very much up at the top for me for this year. That's the most fun I've had in a theater, I think. Which I said the same thing about Black Panther, and so that would be number 2 for me. I think the only thing that puts this one above Black Panther is the visual effects. The visual effects in this movie just trump everything. So I would say Aquaman, Black Panther. I loved Creed 2. I thought that was just a phenomenal movie. It just, let's see. I really liked Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really, really liked that movie. I liked it more than I liked Infinity War. but I will say Infinity War is 5. So what's difficult for me with Infinity War, Thanos to me is the most interesting and compelling villain I've ever seen. And if we were just talking about villains, Infinity War wins.
Yeah.
Hands down. But he was my favorite part of Infinity War.
And he was only there for like 30 minutes total.
He wasn't there in the entirety of the film, and my favorite scenes included, like, my favorite scene in that whole movie is just in Vormir with Gamora. I just thought that was just wow. Even, you know, I love the comedic, I love Drax, you know, the why is Gamora, like, he's hilarious. And all the other characters I just love, but my favorite part was the villain. And overall, the film didn't leave me with the same amount of, like, wonder as Aquaman. It was more like, now I have to see what's coming next because you guys are the worst. How dare you, you know? But yeah, in terms of villains though, Thanos is just untouchable.
Yeah.
Untouchable. What about you?
Well, for me, I honestly would put Aquaman at number 1 as well.
Yeah.
I think that is the best movie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Best superhero movie, at least. Number 2 would definitely be Infinity War for me. I loved Infinity War.
Yeah.
Which is a little strange because, you know, I was talking about, like the drama, whatever. This movie actually did pretty well with the drama.
I agree.
The only reason why it's, you know, not quite up to par with Aquaman is because Aquaman did a perfect balance of it. This movie, or Infinity War, was, you know, they didn't have as much drama as the other movies, but it still had the drama aspects to it. I'm not the biggest fan of, you know, there's so much drama that you only get barely any story.
Your face. I actually want to retract one and switch it out with you.
Okay. My third movie, I would probably have to say is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think that is definitely an underrated film.
I agree.
And this one I kind of struggle with a little bit in my head just then because
it's hard
I couldn't decide between 3 and 4 because Ant-Man and the Wasp, number 4 for me is Solo because it's such an underrated movie. That's the one I was
gonna add in.
That movie, I'm sorry, you know, people didn't watch it because they were boycotting whatever. It's so dumb.
Listen, y'all, I was a boycotter. He made me go because I was like, I can't do this. That movie was so fun. You guys missed out.
That movie
I was proved
is amazing.
Wrong.
That was such a fun movie.
Oh my god, so fun.
And you know, people can disagree if they want, but I feel like that movie kind of brought back the spark of this is Star Wars, you know?
Yeah,
because I personally didn't enjoy Rogue One.
Hated Rogue One. Sorry.
So this movie,
but we
really
also
brought an
loved
aspect
The
to
Last Jedi, and a lot of people have a lot to say about that.
The Last Jedi, I think Solo it might be better than Last Jedi, but
I can't agree just because I have analyzed The Last Jedi, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, technically it's a perfect film. Not like oh, it's better than all the other stuff. I'm saying the way that it was produced.
We're gonna get so many dislikes on this.
I'm sorry. Like I could listen. Everybody's upset because in The Last Jedi, it challenges this belief that we have created about the Star Wars universe. That
good is
always good, evil is always evil. It's not the case.
That's another film.
Challenges that by saying you can be both. I like that. Rant over.
So for me, number 1, Aquaman. Number 2 is Infinity War. Number 3 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. So the superhero movies really dominated. 4 is Solo. Number 5 for me is Creed 2. I wasn't the biggest fan of the movie.
But it's still in your top 5.
It is a really good movie. I will say that simply because of the fact that you really saw both sides of the equation. It wasn't just, you know, in Rocky you had here's the good guy, here's the bad guy, you're rooting for the good guy. This one you really questioned who you wanted to win. You know, at a decent point in the film, I was like, I really want the Russian guy to win. You know, I really want him. I'm sorry, what was his name? Drago? Wait. Victor, is that his name?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't remember
Alright,
the
this
names.
is not Game of Thrones.
Okay. Well, we were talking about Aquaman, so I had,
He's
you know,
got
I
Jason
got
Momoa
it.
on the brain. It happens to all of us. It's Jason Momoa.
But you know, I really wanted
know what?
him to win at one point because
Yeah.
I was like, dude, he's got more to lose.
Yeah.
And it really was
It was
sad.
a very heartening story,
But
because like the way it ended.
They
actually was
really
solid.
kind of not necessarily like full on redeemed, but they had a kind of redeeming story arc for Dolph Lundgren's character.
I agree.
Because, you know, spoiler, end of the movie, you know, it's the big fight. Dolph Lundgren's son is the one who's fighting Creed, and you know he's just getting destroyed. He really had a moment where he realized, hey, I care more about my son than winning. You know,
and that was one of those movies that had such an interesting development in both characters.
And you really saw both sides.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the one side.
Yeah.
That's really what puts it in the top 5
I
for me.
loved the way that we had to watch Adonis Creed get knocked down, literally. I think that was really, I don't know, that made the movie for me, because I'm like, wow, we really felt this guy's journey, and same on the other side. Like, we felt both of their stories and their journeys, and it told both sides of the coin, you know? And yeah, that was an excellent movie. I love it when a film is well-rounded. That was why I like Black Panther.
Creed, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's our top 5. I think the only thing really to talk about is what's going on here.
Okay, so if you can kind of see them, the lighting is really weird. So I have a couple of prints. Thank you for modeling. Vanna White, everybody. We have Becky Lynch and Nita Strauss.
And Darth Maul, but he's been with us for a while.
He's been with us for a while. He will soon be available. I have these both available on my Etsy shop, which will be linked in the description below. And 10% of each purchase is donated to Urban Lotus Project, which is a nonprofit based out of Reno, Nevada, that empowers at-risk and underserved youth and young adults by offering trauma-informed meditation and yoga practices in juvenile detention centers, homeless shelters, etc. So it's a really great cause. I know the director, and she's incredible. She's very passionate. So these are available. You can get a better look at them on the Etsy shop or on my Instagram, which
I know it's kind of, you know, we're done with the holidays a bit, but you know,
spend your money.
Spend your money. My birthday's coming up. That may as well be a national holiday.
Well. We also will have, in theme of this video, a little Aquaman. If you can you say it? Can you say it? Who is she? Wow, queen. This is obviously the original sketch. It's not in print form yet. This will be available in print on the day that this video is uploaded. So go check that one out too. If you saw the movie and you agree that it's superior. That's all I have to say on that.
We are filming this on the Wednesday after Christmas. So, you know, if you celebrate Christmas, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. Otherwise, happy holidays, Happy New Year.
Oh my god, it's going to be 2019 the next time we film a video.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's crazy.
You guys.
You know, it's going to be interesting.
Weird.
And, you know, the next holiday is my birthday, as I said, January 9th. So, you know, go to the, you know, get one of these. You'll see in our next video that's I will show you just, you know, the merch that you can get of the man. I'm just full on Vanna White hand model right now.
Wow, beautiful. Love it. Yeah, don't forget. Also, I do custom pet portraits, so that can be commissioned as well. That requires a little bit more, you know, communication between us. So you can also check that out on my Etsy. There's all the information there on how to get that done. So that's
We'll probably drop it in the description or something. You know,
everything will be down below.
We'll be making
And
a lot of
Instagram.
changes. 2019 is going to be very interesting. I think our video content is going to be a lot different. It's going to be better, I would say. It's going to be improved. You know, we're still starting out, so I mean, we're still getting the hang of it. But we're definitely improving. I think there's just going to be a lot more organized, a lot more good changes coming. Yeah. So thanks for watching.
Happy New Year.
Give it a thumbs up.
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Okay.
Subscribe. We are
Thanks.
YouTubers now.
Yeah.
Bye.
Official. Bye.